I still remember the night everything changed. It was raining softly outside, the kind of quiet evening that makes you grateful to be home. Daniel had just returned from a 3-day business trip. I had made his favorite pasta, lit a candle, and told myself to stop worrying so much about how distant he'd seemed lately. He came in, kissed my cheek, said he'd missed me, and went straight to shower. I smiled after him, believing, like a fool, that everything was fine. I picked up his jacket from the couch to hang it up, and that's when I felt it. Something thick in the inside pocket. At first, I thought it was a receipt or a folded note, but when I pulled it out, I froze. It was an invitation, a wedding invitation, gold lettering, expensive cardstock, his name printed in cursive across the top. You are cordially invited to celebrate the wedding of Daniel Roberts and Rebecca Carter. For a moment, my brain refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. My heart started pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Daniel Roberts. That was my husband's name. The same handwriting, the same address, our address, listed for RSVP. And then I saw the date, 2 weeks from now. I read that line again and again, thinking it had to be some kind of cruel joke. But the more I looked, the more real it became. My knees felt weak. My mouth went dry. My husband, the man I had loved, supported, and built my life around, was about to marry another woman. When I heard the shower turn off, panic surged through me. I shoved the invitation back into his jacket pocket, forced my face into something resembling calm, and went into the kitchen. I must have looked like a ghost when he walked in, towel around his neck, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Hey," he said, walking over to kiss my forehead. "You okay? You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." He smiled, completely unaware that his entire secret was now sitting heavy in my chest like a stone. That night, I lay beside him in bed, staring at the ceiling while he slept peacefully. I could hear his slow breathing, and every inhale made my skin crawl. How could he sleep so soundly when he was hiding something like this? My mind ran through 1,000 possibilities. Maybe there was another Daniel Roberts. Maybe it was a business event. Maybe, just maybe, there was an explanation. But the truth whispered back, cold and steady. He's been lying to you. I waited until morning. I didn't confront him, not yet. I needed to think, to be smart. Because if he could lie this easily, I needed to know how deep the lies went. When he left for work, I took the invitation out again. The name Rebecca Carter stared back at me like a wound. I'd never heard him mention her before. I sat at the kitchen table for an hour, my coffee growing cold, trying to decide what to do. Finally, I picked up my phone and called my best friend, Sophia. She answered cheerfully at first, but her tone changed the second she heard my voice. "Emma, what's wrong?" I told her everything, every detail. There was silence for a few moments. Then she said, "Em, listen to me carefully. Don't confront him yet. You need proof. If he's hiding this, he'll just deny it and cover his tracks. Find out who she is. Let's figure this out together." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Okay." After hanging up, I sat there feeling hollow, but deep inside, something else started to stir. Anger, not wild, uncontrollable anger. The quiet kind that builds slowly, waiting for its moment. I'd given this man everything, my time, my loyalty, my heart, and now I would take back my power, piece by piece. At work that day, I couldn't focus. Every time I glanced at my phone, I half expected Sophia to text with an update. She was good at finding things online. Too good sometimes. Around lunch, one of my co-workers, Liam, stopped by my desk. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said gently. "I'm fine," I replied quickly. He smiled faintly. "You don't look fine. Want to grab some air?" Normally I would have declined, but I needed a break. On the rooftop, the city stretched out beneath us, gray, restless, alive. I leaned against the railing and tried to breathe. "Rough day?" he asked. "You could say that." Liam didn't press. He just stood beside me in silence. It was oddly comforting, the kind of quiet where you don't have to explain yourself. Later that evening, Sophia called again. Her voice was urgent. "I found her," she said. "Rebecca Carter. She's a wedding planner. I checked her website. She's been posting about a private upcoming ceremony with limited guests. The groom's name isn't mentioned anywhere, but get this. She tagged the hotel that's hosting it." My stomach twisted. "Which hotel?" "The Blue Haven Resort, the one Daniel said he was at last week for his conference." I felt my entire body go cold. So it wasn't a conference. It was her. For a long moment, I couldn't even speak. Then I whispered, "He's marrying her there, isn't he?" "Looks like it," Sophia said quietly. "Emma, what are you going to do?" I didn't know yet. All I knew was that the man I thought I knew had built his lies so perfectly that even I couldn't see the cracks. But now, the cracks were everywhere. When Daniel came home that night, I acted normal. I smiled, asked about his day, even made dinner. He looked relaxed, happy, maybe even relieved. And every second of that fake smile burned in my chest. At one point, he said, "You know, I might have another work trip next weekend. Just 2 days." I forced a nod. "Sure. Where to this time?" Same place, Blue Haven Resort." It took everything in me not to let my expression change. "Oh, busy season?" He laughed. "You could say that." That night, I lay in bed again, staring at the ceiling. This time, I wasn't crying. I was planning. The next morning, I called Sophia. "I'm going to Blue Haven," I said. "If he's lying, I'll catch him myself." "Do you want me to come with you?" she asked immediately. "Yes," I said, "but we'll go quietly. No confrontation. I just need to see it with my own eyes." Sophia agreed. The days leading up to the trip were unbearable. Daniel acted like everything was normal. He kissed me goodbye in the mornings, sent me texts from meetings, even told me he loved me before bed. Each word felt like a blade twisting deeper. On Friday morning, he packed his suitcase. I stood by the door watching. "Need help?" I asked. He smiled. "No, it's all good. Just some boring meetings, you know?" I nodded. "Stay safe, okay?" He leaned in and kissed my forehead, then left. As soon as his car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my keys. Sophia was already waiting for me outside, her car engine running. We drove in silence most of the way, the weight of what we might find pressing between us. When the hotel finally came into view, I felt my heart thundering in my chest. Blue Haven Resort, a beautiful coastal hotel. The kind people chose for weddings. We parked across the street and waited. After half an hour, Daniel's car pulled into the lot. He got out, wearing a crisp suit and a tie I'd bought him last year for our anniversary, and he wasn't alone. A woman stepped out of the passenger side. She was tall, elegant, smiling, and she held his arm as if it belonged to her. Sophia gasped softly beside me. "That's her. That's Rebecca." I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred as I watched him lead her inside, his hand on the small of her back, the same way he used to touch me. Every part of me wanted to run in there and scream, to tear everything apart and make him look me in the eye. But I stayed frozen, gripping the edge of my seat until my knuckles went white. "Emma," Sophia whispered, "say something." But I couldn't. I just kept staring at the doors they disappeared through. Finally, I said, "I want to see the room. I want to see where this wedding is happening." Sophia hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," I said. "If he's going to marry another woman while I still wear his ring, I want to know every single detail." We went inside quietly. The hotel staff barely noticed us. The lobby smelled of flowers and expensive perfume. In the main hall, workers were setting up chairs and floral arches. I walked closer, and there it was. A sign on a stand, "Wedding, Daniel Roberts and Rebecca Carter, private event." I stood there, staring at my name's absence. For the first time in days, I felt something break inside me. But under that pain, a new strength began to rise. He thought he could erase me, replace me, bury me under his lies. But I wasn't going to be the broken wife in his story. I was going to rewrite it, and that was the moment everything changed. I don't know how long I stood in that hotel lobby, staring at the sign with Daniel's name beside hers. People moved around me, staff arranging flowers, guests checking in, but it all felt distant, like I was trapped inside a glass box and the world kept spinning outside it. Sophia's hand rested on my shoulder. "Emma, we should go," she whispered. "Someone might recognize you." She was right. I forced myself to turn away, every step feeling heavier than the last. We walked out of the hotel, back to the car, and I sat there in silence for what felt like forever. Finally, I said, "He's really doing it. He's marrying her." Sophia looked at me, sadness soft in her eyes. "Not if we stop him first." That word, stop, echoed in my mind the whole drive back, because I realized something. I could either drown in this pain, or I could use it. When we reached my house, I didn't cry. I went straight to Daniel's office, unlocked the drawers, and started going through everything. Bills, contracts, receipts. He'd never been careful. He just assumed I would never look. In the bottom drawer, I found a folder labeled Consulting Expenses. Inside were hotel invoices from Blue Haven, 3 separate stays in the past 2 months. One invoice even listed 2-person suite. My stomach turned. I took pictures of everything, dates, room numbers, credit card statements. Then I opened his laptop. The password was the same as always. Our anniversary. How poetic. His email inbox was tidy. Too tidy. But I checked the sent folder, and there it was. A string of emails to someone named RC about the ceremony, guest list, and our honeymoon itinerary. I clicked on the attachments. One was a contract for a private wedding photographer. Another was a scanned copy of his ID, sent as proof of residency. My address. He hadn't just cheated. He'd used our life to build his new one. I took screenshots of everything, dozens of them. Then I saved them on a hidden drive. When Sophia called later that evening, I told her what I'd found. "That's enough proof to destroy him," she said. I exhaled. "I don't want to destroy him. I want him to face what he's done." "Then you need a plan," she said. "A clean one." The next few days, I acted like nothing was wrong. I laughed when he texted. I said I missed him. I even told him I couldn't wait for him to come home. In truth, I was building a case. At work, I confided in Liam. Not everything, just that my husband was lying to me and I needed help tracing a few transactions. Liam worked in finance. He knew how to follow money. He didn't ask many questions. He just nodded and said, "Send me what you have." By the end of the day, he'd uncovered something even I hadn't expected. "Emma," he said, lowering his voice, "your husband has been transferring small amounts to an account under the name Rebecca C. Events, almost $20,000 over 3 months. I felt dizzy. He's funding his own wedding? Looks that way. I thanked Liam, promising to keep him updated. That night, Daniel came home earlier than usual. He brought flowers, white lilies, my favorite. "Thought you deserved a surprise," he said with that same easy grin I used to fall in love with. I forced a smile, took the flowers, and thanked him. But inside, I was studying every movement, every lie behind his eyes. During dinner, he talked about work, about some promotion he might get soon. I almost laughed. How easily he could weave fantasy into daily life. When he went upstairs to shower, I texted Sophia. "Phase 2 starts tomorrow." The next morning, I drove to a lawyer's office. A quiet, gray-haired woman named Ms. Dawson listened patiently as I told her everything, every detail, from the invitation to the hotel invoices. When I finished, she said calmly, "Mrs. Roberts, what your husband is attempting amounts to fraud and bigamy. If he marries this woman while still legally married to you, it's a criminal offense. Hearing that word, criminal, was oddly satisfying. Ms. Dawson continued, "You can file a report now or wait until after the ceremony to gather irrefutable evidence. But if you want justice without scandal, there's a smarter way." She outlined it carefully. Gather proof, serve him papers right before the wedding, and let the law and humiliation do the rest. I left the office with a folder of forms and a strange sense of calm. For the first time since finding that invitation, I felt in control. Over the next week, everything unfolded like a carefully scripted play. Daniel continued to lie. He talked about business calls, stayed late at meetings, and kept glancing at his phone. I smiled, nodded, and played along. Sophia helped me collect every bit of proof. Emails, invoices, photos. She compiled them into a neat, labeled folder. Liam arranged for copies of Daniel's financial transfers, just in case he tried to move money after being exposed. The night before the wedding, Daniel packed again. "Don't wait up for me," he said, kissing my cheek. "I won't," I replied softly. When the door closed behind him, I looked around the house, our house, and realized how much of my life I'd given to someone who never deserved it. I called Sophia. "Tomorrow's the day," I said. "You ready?" "Yes," I said, "but I'm not going there as his wife anymore. I'm going as the woman who's ending this." The morning sun rose bright and cruel. I dressed simply, in a white blouse and jeans, nothing dramatic. Sophia picked me up, and together we drove to Blue Haven again. On the way, she said quietly, "You could still walk away, you know. Let the lawyers handle it." I shook my head. No. I want to see his face when he realizes the life he built on lies is collapsing. When we arrived, the hotel was buzzing. Guests in pastel dresses, photographers, a string quartet warming up. It was beautiful, painfully so. We waited near the side entrance where the staff passed through. I saw him first, Daniel, in his suit again, boutonniere, pinned perfectly. He looked every bit the happy groom. Rebecca appeared moments later, radiant, in a flowing white gown. She laughed at something he whispered, touching his arm with the ease of a woman in love. My chest tightened, not from jealousy. Those feelings had burned away long ago, but from the sheer audacity of it all. Sophia squeezed my hand. "Remember the plan." I nodded, pulling the envelope from my bag, the legal documents Ms. Dawson had prepared. As they began walking toward the ceremony hall, I stepped forward. "Daniel." He froze. For a second, his expression was pure confusion. Then recognition hit, and his face drained of color. "Emma?" he whispered. "What are you? How?" Rebecca looked between us, bewildered. "Daniel, who is she?" I met her eyes calmly. "I'm his wife." Gasps rippled through the small crowd of early guests nearby. Daniel opened his mouth, stammering for words, but I handed him the envelope before he could speak. "These are divorce papers," I said evenly, "and copies of everything you've tried to hide. Emails, invoices, bank transfers. The authorities will receive theirs this afternoon." Rebecca took a step back, her bouquet trembling in her hands. "You told me you were divorced," she whispered. Daniel reached for her. Panic etched across his face. "Rebecca, I can explain." "No," I interrupted. "You can't, because every word you say from now on is part of your confession." He turned toward me, anger flashing now. "You had no right to." "I had every right," I cut in. "You built your future on my name, my house, my money. You thought you could erase me quietly. But I'm still here, Daniel, and now everyone knows what kind of man you are." For a long moment, no one moved. Cameras clicked somewhere behind us. Someone whispered my name. Then I turned to Rebecca. "You didn't deserve this either, but now you know the truth." I walked away before either of them could respond. Outside, the air felt lighter. Sophia caught up to me, eyes wide. Emma, that was incredible. It was necessary, I said. We got into her car, and as the hotel faded in the rearview mirror, I finally exhaled. I thought the pain would overwhelm me, but instead, a strange peace settled in. I wasn't broken. I wasn't defeated. I had simply seen the truth and survived it. When I got home, I placed my wedding ring on the kitchen counter. The circle of gold looked smaller than I remembered. I whispered, "Goodbye," and walked away. That night, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. But justice wasn't done yet, because exposing him was only the beginning. For 2 days after the wedding disaster, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Blocked numbers, unknown callers, messages from people I didn't even know. Everyone wanted to know the story. Some wanted gossip. Some offered sympathy. I ignored them all. The only voice I wanted to silence was Daniel's. But of course, he wouldn't stay silent. On the third morning, he showed up at my house. I saw his car pull up through the blinds. The same car he had driven to his wedding. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the raw fury that came back the moment I saw him. He knocked once, twice, then his voice, "Emma, please, just talk to me." I opened the door, but I didn't invite him in. He looked terrible. Tie askew, dark circles under his eyes, desperation written all over him. For a brief second, I almost pitied him. Then I remembered what he'd done. "What do you want?" I asked. "I need to explain," he said. "It's not what you think." I laughed. "Really? Because what I think is that you planned a wedding with another woman while married to me. That's pretty clear." He ran a hand through his hair. "Rebecca didn't know. I told her we were separated. I was going to tell you. I swear I was, but everything spiraled." "Separated?" I repeated. "Funny, you forgot to tell me that." He winced. "I made mistakes, big ones, but I never stopped loving you." That line almost made me laugh again. Men like Daniel always pulled that card when they were caught. The desperate confession of love that cost them nothing. "You stopped loving me the moment you started lying," I said quietly, "and you've been lying for a long time." "Emma, please," he said, stepping closer. "Let me inside, just for 5 minutes." I blocked the doorway. "No, you lost that right." He looked down, defeated for a moment, and then straightened. "You ruined my life," he said suddenly. "Do you realize what you did to me? Everyone at the hotel saw. My colleagues, my friends, my reputation is destroyed." I stared at him in disbelief. "Your life? You were committing a crime, Daniel." He glared at me, voice rising. "You didn't have to humiliate me like that." "Humiliate you?" My voice trembled, but not with fear. "You humiliated yourself. I just stopped pretending." He flinched, then exhaled sharply. "I'll fix this. I'll talk to Rebecca. I'll end it, and then maybe—" "Stop," I said. "There's no then. You and I are over. You can fix whatever you want, but not us." For a moment, he just stood there, staring at me like he didn't understand the words. Then his tone softened, almost pleading. "Emma, you can't do this. You've always forgiven me before." I took a deep breath. "That's the problem, Daniel. I kept forgiving you so you could keep betraying me." His mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, I saw it, the truth behind his arrogance. He wasn't sorry. He was scared, not of losing me, but of losing control. "Leave," I said quietly, "and don't come back." He hesitated, then turned and walked away. The sound of his car engine faded down the street. I stood in the doorway, heart pounding. A strange mix of relief and grief washing over me. That night, I sent my lawyer a message. Proceed with the filing. Over the next week, I tried to rebuild a rhythm. Work, sleep, eat, repeat. But inside, I felt hollow. Years of my life had been tied to that man, and now there was a gaping space where he used to be. Sophia called often, checking on me. You did the right thing, she'd say. I know, I'd reply. But knowing didn't stop the memories from sneaking in. The laughter, the shared dreams, the quiet mornings that now felt like scenes from someone else's life. Then, one evening, there was a knock on my door again. I braced myself, expecting Daniel, but it wasn't him. It was Rebecca. She looked different, tired, pale, her eyes rimmed red as if she'd been crying for days. She held a small envelope in her hand. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. I hesitated, then nodded. She sat at the edge of my couch, clutching the envelope like it might dissolve if she let go. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she began, "but I needed to tell you." I had no idea he was married, none. I believed her. I had seen her face that day at the hotel. Shock, disbelief, heartbreak, the same look I'd once worn. "He told me he'd been divorced for over a year," she said. "He said you left him. He even showed me fake documents. When you showed up—" Her voice cracked. Everything made sense. I nodded slowly. "I know the feeling." She handed me the envelope. Inside was a stack of printed emails, messages from Daniel begging her to take him back, promising to fix things. "I thought you should see these," she said. "He doesn't understand that it's over. Not for me, not for you." I looked up. "Thank you." She stood, hesitating. "You know, I used to think women like you were lucky. Married, stable, secure. Now I realize sometimes the cage just looks prettier." Her words hit harder than she probably intended. When she left, I felt something shift inside me again. Not anger this time, but clarity. Daniel had taken pieces of both our lives, twisted them to suit his story, and left wreckage behind. But he no longer owned the narrative. The next day, I went to work for the first time without feeling ashamed. People had heard whispers, of course. They always do. But I kept my head high. During lunch, Liam stopped by my desk again. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Better," I said honestly. "Lighter." He smiled faintly. "I heard about the hotel. You've got more courage than most people I know." "Courage or desperation," I said, half joking. "Sometimes they're the same thing," he replied. For a moment our eyes met, and I realized how kind he'd been through all of this, quietly helping, never asking for more. It made me wonder how many good people I'd overlooked while trying to save a man who never wanted to be saved. That night, I sat alone on my porch, watching the sunset bleed into the horizon. For the first time, I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. 3 weeks passed. The legal process moved forward faster than I expected. The divorce was pending, Daniel's fraudulent actions under investigation. He'd stopped calling. The silence was golden. Then one morning, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, just my name. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Please meet me one last time for closure." It was signed, Daniel. My first instinct was to tear it up, but something in me wanted to face him again, not as his wife, but as the woman he underestimated. I chose a public place, a cafe downtown. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting by the window, looking smaller somehow. The arrogance was gone, replaced by exhaustion. "Emma," he said quietly when I sat down, "thank you for coming." I folded my arms. "Make it quick." He sighed. "I just wanted to apologize for everything. I lost everything, my job, my reputation, your control," I finished. "That's what you lost?" He looked at me sharply, then nodded. "Maybe you're right. I don't expect forgiveness." "Good," I said. He leaned forward. "But I still love you." That word again. Love. Used like a weapon and a shield. I studied him for a long moment before speaking. "Love without respect isn't love," I said. "You loved what I gave you. Stability, admiration, loyalty. But you never loved me enough to tell the truth." He swallowed hard. "I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it." "I hope you do," I said softly, "because I already spent years regretting trusting you." I stood to leave, but before I walked away, I looked at him one last time. I'm not angry anymore, Daniel. I'm free. And that's the one thing you can never take from me again. His eyes glistened as I walked out. Maybe he finally understood that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation, it means release. Outside, the world felt brighter. I called Sophia on the way home. It's done, I said. She smiled through the phone. You sound lighter. I am. That night, I deleted every picture, every message, every trace of him from my phone. I wasn't erasing my past. I was making space for something new. For the first time in a long time, I slept without nightmares. A week later, Rebecca reached out again. She'd started a support group for women who'd been deceived or manipulated by their partners, women whose stories sounded eerily like ours. She asked if I'd come speak. I hesitated, but then I realized that silence helps people like Daniel thrive. Telling the truth breaks that chain. At the first meeting, I stood in front of 10 women. They listened as I told them everything, from the night I found the invitation to the day I walked away from the man who betrayed me. When I finished, one woman said quietly, "You make me believe it's possible to start over." I smiled. It is. Not easy, not fast, but possible. As I left that evening, Liam called. "Dinner?" he asked casually. I smiled at the sound of his voice. "Dinner sounds nice." It wasn't love. Not yet. It was something softer, something real, a friendship built on honesty, not illusion. As I drove home that night, windows down, wind in my hair, I thought about everything that had happened. Pain had turned into purpose. Betrayal had turned into strength. And I had turned into someone I finally recognized, myself. Justice wasn't about watching him fall. It was about learning to rise again, and I did. When I thought it was all finally behind me, life surprised me again. But this time, the surprise wasn't a wound. It was a mirror. 2 months had passed since the cafe meeting. The divorce was almost finalized. Daniel had gone quiet, and I was learning how to exist without waiting for someone else's apology. Then one afternoon, my lawyer called. "There's something you should see," she said. "It's about Daniel." I met her at her office, a small folder waiting on her desk. Inside were documents from the investigation, financial records, email trails, and a letter Daniel had written to the court. My stomach twisted as I read it. The truth wasn't simple betrayal anymore. It was deception woven into every corner of our life. He'd been using our joint accounts to fund business debts. He'd hidden loans, falsified paperwork, and even used my signature without my consent. He wasn't just a liar. He was a thief. When I finished reading, my lawyer looked at me carefully. "We can press criminal charges," she said. "It's your choice." I nodded slowly. He took years from me. I won't let him take my peace, too, but I also won't let him walk free. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the folder open in front of me. I stared at the signatures. My name, forged in ink that wasn't mine. And for the first time, I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt resolve. I thought of the woman I used to be. The one who doubted her instincts, who made excuses, who wanted to believe lies because the truth hurt too much. She was gone now. The next morning, I went to the police station. I gave my statement. When I left, the sun felt warmer than it had in months. Days turned into weeks. News spread quietly. Daniel had been arrested for fraud and identity misuse. He was released on bail, but the damage was done. The man who once controlled every room he entered was now at the mercy of his own lies. Sophia was with me when we heard the news. "Do you feel better?" she asked. I thought for a long moment. Not better, just clean. Like the truth finally washed everything off. She nodded. Justice doesn't always feel good at first. It just feels honest. Around that time, I started volunteering at Rebecca's support group more often. Each meeting reminded me that pain connects people, but healing sets them free. The stories I heard broke my heart, yet they also stitched something back together inside me. One evening after a session, Rebecca pulled me aside. "I got a message," she said quietly, "from Daniel." My breath caught. "What did he say?" "He said he's sorry, that he wanted me to tell you he never meant to hurt you." I looked at her, searching her eyes for a reaction. She shrugged softly. I didn't respond, because sorry means nothing without change. Her strength mirrored what I'd been learning. All along, forgiveness wasn't for him. It was for me. Weeks later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Curiosity one. I answered. "Emma." The voice was hoarse, uncertain. "Daniel." I froze, ready to hang up, but he spoke quickly. "Please, just 30 seconds. I'm not asking for anything." Silence. "I wanted you to know," he continued, "that I've been in therapy. They said I have a compulsion, a need to feel admired. I thought if people saw me as successful, I'd finally be enough. But it never stopped. It ruined everything." I didn't say a word. "I know you'll never forgive me," he said quietly, "but I wanted you to hear that I'm trying to fix myself, for whatever that's worth." I finally spoke. "I hope you do fix yourself, Daniel. Not for me, for whoever you become next. But understand this, fixing yourself doesn't erase what you broke." There was a pause, then a soft, "I know." And then the line went dead. I sat there for a while, letting the words settle. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or pity, just finality. Months passed. The court finalized the divorce. My name was cleared from every financial mess he'd made. I sold the house we once shared, too many ghosts in the walls, and moved into a small apartment near the city park. It was quiet, peaceful, mine. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling for no reason. That's how I knew I was healing. One Sunday morning, as I was sipping coffee on the balcony, my phone buzzed again. It was Liam. "Morning, sunshine," his text read. "Still on for brunch?" I smiled. Absolutely. He'd been patient, never pushing, never demanding, just present. And maybe that's what real love looks like. Calm, not chaos. At brunch, he looked at me and said, "You're different now." "How so?" "You carry yourself like someone who's not afraid anymore." I smiled. "Because I'm not." He raised his glass. "To second chances." "Not at love," I said with a grin. "At life." We clinked glasses, laughter echoing between us. Later that night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done since the day I found the wedding invitation. There's freedom in knowing the truth, even when it hurts. There's power in walking away, even when your heart wants to stay. And there's beauty in realizing that sometimes losing someone is how you find yourself. But life still had one final twist to show me. A week later, I received a letter. Handwritten, sealed, no return address. Inside was a short note. "You were right about everything. Thank you for showing me what honesty looks like, even when I couldn't give it. D." I folded the paper and tucked it away, not out of nostalgia, but as a reminder, truth doesn't always come when we want it, but it always comes. That evening, returned to the support group. A new woman was speaking, her voice trembling as she told a story that sounded so familiar. Lies, promises, betrayal. When she finished, she looked down, ashamed. I leaned forward and said gently, "You don't have to stay in the dark just because someone else is afraid of the light." She looked up, tears glistening. That's when I realized my pain had turned into purpose, and that was the truest kind of victory. As I walked home, the city lights reflected on the wet pavement. I thought about Daniel. not with anger, not with longing, but with understanding. He'd been the storm, but I had become the calm after it. And this time, the calm was mine to keep. When people ask how I survived it all, the betrayal, the lies, the humiliation, I tell them this: you don't survive by pretending it didn't hurt. You survive by facing it head on and choosing to rise anyway. A year passed since I found that wedding invitation. 12 months that changed everything. The woman I used to be, the one who waited for someone else to define her worth, was gone. Now, I define myself. I'd built a new life, smaller, quieter, but more real than anything I'd had before. My mornings started with peace instead of panic. My nights ended with gratitude instead of tears. And sometimes, when the wind hit just right, I'd think back to that moment. The crisp paper of the invitation in my hand, the shock in my chest, and I'd whisper, "Thank you." Because that moment, painful as it was, became the beginning of my freedom. One morning, Rebecca called. "Guess what?" she said, excitement bubbling in her voice. "We got funding for the Women's Center. It's happening." I smiled so hard my cheeks ached. "That's incredible." She laughed. "I couldn't have done it without you, Emma. You inspired all of us." I shook my head. "No, we inspired each other." The center opened a few months later, a place for women starting over, rebuilding, rediscovering their worth. I volunteered there every week, sharing my story not as a victim, but as proof that pain doesn't define us. Choices do. One evening, after a long day at the center, I walked to the park near my apartment. The sky was painted in gold and rose. Children laughed in the distance, and there, on a nearby bench, sat Liam, a book in his hands, the same quiet smile that had anchored me through the chaos. "Hey," he said, standing up as I approached. "Hey yourself," I replied. He handed me a cup of coffee. "Extra cinnamon." "Just how you like it." I took it, smiling. "You remember." He grinned. "You're not exactly easy to forget." We sat together, watching the sunset bleed into twilight. For once, there were no words about the past, no ghosts lurking in the silence, just two people sitting in peace, not trying to fix each other, just existing side by side. After a while, Liam spoke softly. "You ever think about everything that had to go wrong just to bring you here?" I nodded. "All the time, but I don't see it as things going wrong anymore. I see it as life pushing me where I was meant to go." He looked at me, eyes full of quiet admiration. "You're stronger than you know." I smiled. I finally believed that. Later that night, I went home and stood before my mirror, the same one where I'd once stared at a reflection I didn't recognize. This time, I saw a woman who had fought for herself, not perfectly, not without scars, but fiercely. I whispered to my reflection, "You made it." And for the first time, I truly felt it. Months later, the Women's Center invited me to speak at a public event, Stories of Strength. When my name was called, I stepped onto the stage. The lights were bright, but I wasn't nervous. I'd already faced the worst kind of spotlight. I took a deep breath and began. I used to think strength meant holding on. Now I know it means letting go. Of lies, of shame, of people who don't deserve your loyalty. I paused, scanning the audience, faces full of empathy, tears, hope. "I once found a wedding invitation in my husband's jacket," I continued, "but my name wasn't on it. That moment shattered me, but now I thank that version of me, the one who chose truth over illusion, because she's the reason I'm standing here today." Applause filled the room, but what I felt wasn't pride, it was peace. When I stepped down, Rebecca hugged me. "You just changed lives tonight," she whispered. I smiled. We all did. After the event, I walked outside. The air was cool, the stars bright. Liam was waiting near his car, leaning casually against the door. "You were amazing," he said. I mean, I already knew that, but hearing you say those words, I laughed softly. Thank you. He took my hand gently. You know, Emma, some endings are really just beginnings. I looked at him, the warmth in his eyes, the calm in his presence, and realized he was right. That night, I didn't dream of the past. I dreamed of possibilities, of journeys still waiting to begin, of the quiet confidence that comes from surviving something meant to destroy you. I woke up smiling. A few days later, I revisited the place where everything had started. The boutique where I'd first found that wedding invitation in Daniel's jacket pocket. The shop had new owners now, but standing there, surrounded by the faint scent of cologne and old memories, I felt no pain, just gratitude, because that was the day I stopped being his wife and started being myself. When I left the boutique, my phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. For a moment, my breath caught, but when I opened it, I smiled. It wasn't Daniel. It was from a woman I'd met at the center. I told my husband the truth today. I'm leaving. You gave me the courage to finally do it. Tears welled up, but they weren't from sadness. They were from pride. Not in her, not even in me, but in the chain of strength that was spreading, one story at a time. That evening I stood on my balcony as the sun disappeared beyond the skyline. I thought about everything, the lies, the heartbreak, the sleepless nights, and then I thought about everything that had come after, the courage, the sisterhood, the rebirth. Life had taken me apart piece by piece, but I had rebuilt myself stronger, clearer, freer. I whispered into the evening air to every woman who's ever been broken, may you realize you were never meant to stay shattered. Because the truth is, sometimes the hardest heartbreaks aren't punishments. They're invitations, not to a wedding, but to your own becoming. That's my story. I found a wedding invitation in my husband's jacket, but my name wasn't on it, and now I know why. It was never meant to be, because the real invitation was for me, to rise, to rebuild, to finally come home to myself.